Hey everybody, George back again with the In Good Spirits podcast with Chris and MJ.
Hey guys.
Hey, how's it going?
So, I figured today with you guys a special little treat of my two favorite all-time no competition Irish whiskeys.
See, this is something I have very little experience with. So, decent amount of time with bourbon, rye, gin, any number of different spirits. But one I know very little about is Irish whiskey. Yeah, I've tasted some of the big names, and by and large, I strongly dislike just about every one I've tasted. So I know I'm in for a bit of a treat, but I'd like some information about, what makes Irish whiskey, and why are these special to you?
So, Irish whiskey is quite simply whiskey from Ireland. There's not too much
Pretty
more than
straightforward.
there's a few different style there's a few different styles of it. One being the first one we're having is a single malt, and then the second one we're having is a single pot still, and then there's triple pot distilled, which we can get into more later on what that really means and doesn't mean, because we're not actually having a triple pot still whiskey today. But and then there's blends of malt and grain, all sorts of different options there with Irish whiskey.
Okay, so it's, when we're talking single malts, the same kind of designation you'd see in Scotch, just obviously sourced from Ireland versus Scotland.
Correct, yes.
So, man, this one, so we'll have commented on this, we'll comment this on the other episode, but this one I've already tasted um, and given errant tasting notes on. But this is a special Irish whiskey, and this is from Dingle. But can you tell us what this one, what the why this one's special?
Well, first and foremost, I've been to the distillery, and
Look at you.
yeah, and it's probably like the place itself, Dingle, the town and the peninsula and everything. One of the most beautiful places I've ever been in my entire life. And I briefly tried living in Hawaii. Fuck Hawaii, it's a shithole. But I, I'm kidding. Hawaii's great. It just for people who know Hawaii, I was in Waianae. That's all you need to know.
Ooh.
But anyway, Ireland's a wonderful place. Dingle's the most special and magical place I've ever been. But besides that, the whiskey is just truly incredible, and it's independently owned, true craft, bunch of former craft brewers that opened a distillery, and they do a phenomenal job.
So when it comes to age, proof, and finishing, what's on this one before we dive into actual notes?
So on this one, we are drinking batch number 4, which is aged in bourbon, sherry, and port casks. The
Wow.
the proof is 46.5%.
Okay.
And the
Yeah. So we're
age is, I don't know exactly, but I would guess between, you know what? I'm going to tell you the age at the end.
Okay. So we're talking 93 proof. We've got a lot of different finishes. I mean, port, sherry, and bourbon. I'm assuming it's in bourbon first, and then sherry and port finishes in order. I would assume.
Actually, not how they did it. They take
Interesting.
each component of this whiskey is exclusively aged in that barrel and then blended to taste.
Okay. Very cool.
So, real quick, MJ, what is your history with Irish whiskey there?
A lot. I grew up on Irish whiskey. I half my family's from Canada, and this is what I know and love, and I'm super excited. I've had this before. I absolutely love this whiskey, and I'm really excited to talk more about it because I think it's a great product.
Have you had batch 4 before, or have you only had the earlier batches?
No, you're right. No, it was an earlier batch. It actually I got it for my birthday off of your recommendation that someone bought me.
Oh,
So,
that's right,
you
that's
know,
right. Very generous
yeah.
gift. But, real quick
Mm.
note about the batches from Dingle. I actually have a bottle of every batch. I brought one back with me from Ireland the trip. I ordered one from overseas for batch 2, and then batch 3 and 4 have been available here. But batch 1, only done in bourbon barrels. And in talking to the people at the distillery, the reason for that is, well, first and foremost, It's not the best barrel, it's just the cheapest barrel. So, their first batch, they couldn't spend tons of money on it, but second batch was sherry finish. Third batch, or not finish, but bourbon and sherry. The third batch was bourbon and port, and now bourbon, sherry, and port on batch 4.
That makes sense. I like that evolution too. I'm sure it's fascinating to taste them in that. I guess it would be a bit of a vertical since it's different year releases, so that'd be really interesting.
I actually would like to do that eventually, but
Yeah.
that, we'll do it. We'll do it, just not
Yeah,
yet.
yeah, that'd be fun.
So right off the
Yeah.
bat, what are you guys getting on the nose?
What don't you get on the nose? It's a cornucopia of fruit in this. It's there's so much for me that I'm picking up.
It's like peach cobbler and custard and cream and like dried
Exactly.
fruit and
Dried
spice.
fruit, those sweet type, the flavors.
I love that peach cobbler note because I think that really ripe peach, not quite canned, but that really ripe cooked peach,
Hmm.
with a little bit of that spice, but it's got those lightly cooked stone fruit notes. It's got that apple on the nose, but it's just there's so much round, a little bit of that oxidized fruit note, but really, really round, really tasty.
What are you guys getting on the palate though? Because I see that
Uh,
nobody could hold off on
Hmm.
getting right to tasting it from the smell there.
mm. Now this is kind of the epitome of balance because it's got brightness, but it's not sharp. It's bright on the palate. I'm getting more of that oxidized flavor from that port and sherry influence. I'm getting definitely a lot more of that on the palate than on the nose. But it's got that really round middle, that round toasty middle. That's just this. It's super pleasant.
Yeah, it runs that sweetness across your palate. It's phenomenal to drink, and I think if somebody that's not used to drinking Irish whiskeys, this is the place to start right here. You will not be disappointed, in my opinion.
Well, I think the only problem with starting here is you will hate most other Irish whiskey.
That's a good point.
A good starting point though, where you won't ruin all of the other whiskey you ever have, though, I'd say would be
Yeah,
something like West Cork would be a good place to start to
yeah.
get beyond that like Jameson era
Hmm.
area.
Yeah. So more of a technical question for you, George. So we've talked about single malt in the context of Scotch. In Irish whiskey, when it comes to malt, does it usually have a smoke characteristic to it like Scotch does, or is it variable depending on where it's from?
So there is only one single Irish whiskey that is a single malt that uses peat on the barley. It is not the only peated whiskey from Ireland because there's a single malt from West Cork actually where they peat char the cask, not the whiskey. So
Mm,
there's two peaty Irish whiskeys, but only one actually uses peat, and that's Connemara. Dingle does not,
okay.
and nor do any other distilleries use peat for their barley.
But those smoke like notes, that's all from the malt in this
Right, right.
case.
The inherent earthiness of the barley and just from the malting process of literally halting germination with heat and like essentially roasting like you would a coffee bean, but the grains, yeah.
Because you're definitely it's the nice thing on this one is it's an undercurrent of that roasted smoky note that's in such like exquisite balance with the rest of the flavors because it's tingling on the palate but it's not dominating in any way shape or form.
It's
And I
elegant.
think Chris, yeah, you kind of hit it on the nose when you say the word balance. That's what this whiskey is. It's so well balanced. It's
Mm.
so well rounded here.
Yeah, now I'm getting on subsequent tastes, those big sherry notes on the top of the palate. It doesn't have the huge port notes, but I think it just again to that roundness of the whole experience, it just lives in that again with all those different influences. It's all there but they're not striking in of themselves.
It's a good way to put it. And
It's really
actually,
something.
I had to pull up my phone to double check I had the quote right. But I think this is one of the best examples of a quote from who I would consider the grandfather of Japanese whiskey, Masataka Taketsuru. The quote is, "Whiskey making is an act of cooperation between the blessings of nature and the wisdom of man."
Hmm. I think that's very apt in this case, and this is definitely a pretty special whiskey in a lot of ways. Very tasty.
So, now that we've established this is great whiskey, at 80 to $85 on the shelf, what do you guys think of that as a price point for it?
Pretty reasonable, I would say.
Yeah, I think reasonable is about the right descriptor for it. I'd say it's at value. I don't think you're getting a huge bargain on it at that price. I think that's at value. I think it's worth that dollar for sure.
Yeah.
But I don't think it lives up to that, above $100 bottle. But is it worth that price? Absolutely.
So,
Yeah. This is not something that it's not your everyday drinker for me. This is, some little special occasion that, you're going to break out, a little extra cash for.
Yeah, absolutely.
so now that I couldn't help but finish my glass. Circling back around to the earlier mentioned age, I want MJ to guess, I want Chris to guess, and then I'll reveal roughly what the age is.
Well, I would say somewhere between 10 and 12 years.
I think it's going to be a little bit less than that. And the reason I say that is I think,
Because of how big a deal I'm making of it.
no, as I take another step, and not just because of that, but because at the at the proof that it still has a little bit of brightness to it. So I think it's going to be I think it's going to be around that. I'm going to be bold and say it's 4 years, but I think I might be off by a couple. My first guess was like six, but I'm gonna stick with six.
My best guess on age is between 3 and 5 years.
Yeah, that's because it still has some sharpness to it. It's got that youth, and I say youth at 4 years, but it doesn't feel long age to me.
But that being said, it's a perfect example of age not really being everything in terms of great whiskey.
Yeah.
Well, and I think also we can say that depending on your palate preferences, something that has a little bit of youth still gives it that sharpness, that brightness that a lot of years can mellow out.
True, absolutely true. Because age ain't nothing but a number, baby.
On that note, I think we're going to pivot over to now. I've had something from this producer before, but this is a green spot Bordeaux finish. I mean, when you're talking about expensive barrels, I mean Bordeaux barrels are pricey. You're not getting much more pricey than that unless you're getting the Burgundy barrels.
Pretty much, yeah. And yeah, this is the it's a lot of sherry barreling on it. It's bourbon and sherry casks. Then it's finished in Bordeaux, Saint Julien area of Bordeaux, Chateau Leoville Barton. And yeah, it's a single pot still Irish whiskey, so again, not a triple pot still, but I don't think there's anything we need to talk about this whiskey aside from how it tastes, because it's just, you'll see. But real quick,
So my one question regarding it. So Green Spot is the brand or is that the version? Because I think I've seen Yellow Spot.
so Green Spot, Yellow Spot, there are different products under the Middleton distillery. So the same place that
Okay.
makes Jameson and Middleton and right now Tullamore Dew. However, Tullamore Dew has their own facility and will no longer be using Middleton once they have old enough whiskey. Blah blah blah.
Okay, so green is set at this sort of thing. It's not. There's different versions of green. Green is one thing.
There are a few versions of green, but yeah, green is
Okay.
one of their sub. Like there's the regular green spot. There's the green spot Bordeaux finish. There's a green spot California Zinfandel finish. There's a few different
Okay.
green spots. Yeah.
Gotcha. Whew, man. Now this one, when it comes to the nose, there is no doubt that this is a lot of sherry influence. I mean,
Yeah.
that is sherry on the nose, a huge oxidated, you know, oxidative, grape sherry note. It's huge on the nose. Hmm, man, yeah, that's really pleasant though.
So actually, real quick on the note of why this is also special to me, beyond the fact that it's just incredible whiskey, is I actually tried this for the first time in Ireland as well at what they call an off license, which is basically a shop that carries alcohol and like anything else. But they were basically like, oh yeah, here's our sample table. Pop open whatever the hell you want and have a sip. And this stopped
I
me dead
mean,
in my tracks.
there's no reason it shouldn't, because you're getting the big Bordeaux as well, but it's merged in with that oxidative note, and it's that nose is really intoxicating. I mean, it's fascinating.
Yeah, you could
Yeah.
smell it all day.
Mhm. Yeah. It's very grapey to me. That's just straight from the cask.
Yeah,
When you say grapey, you don't mean like Concordy, like Welch's grape. You mean like
No.
very distinctly wine
But
grape.
yes, yes.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
It's
there's
very
nothing but
refined.
maturity, nothing but
Mhm.
maturity on the nose. That's for sure. Hmm. I'm excited to dive into this one.
Even though you could smell it all day, you can't help but taste it too.
Wow, boy, that is a special whiskey. This one is, even though it's not that big of body, that first roll over the palate is so rich in those grapey notes, and it's that merging of the Bordeaux and the sherry, because you're getting those nutty notes, but also those rich aged French wine notes.
Oh yeah,
Man,
it's like lots of heather honey and like halved walnuts and dried red like bright red fruit. It's beautiful whiskey that just has so many layers of complexity to it, but not in an overwhelming way. In
oh,
like the most exciting like zen connected to the universe kind of way, if that makes any sense.
It is super smooth and light. And that's what I really like about it. It's light as it travels across your palate.
I think that's actually a great descriptor, despite the fact that it has all these big influences. When you're talking about walnut, you're talking about Bordeaux, you're talking about sherry, these are big influences. It's not oily, it's not thick and rich on the palate, but some of the flavor
Mhm.
notes are rich, which makes this completely intriguing to taste. Yeah, I think I love that. I love that walnut and almost walnut hazelnut kind of note, that high nut note. Really, really pleasant.
And not overly oily. Like when we've talked about bourbon in the past, it's like that walnut
Mm.
oil. It's the actual like the flesh, like a fresh flesh of a nut, not necessarily like extracted uh, oiliness.
Yeah, agree completely. I mean, MJ, from somebody who you said you've had a bunch of different Irish whiskeys, I mean, this is such a unique expression.
Yeah, and what a difference between the Dingle compared to the Green Spot. How two ends of the spectrum that we're seeing here, all from the same region of the world. It's it's pretty special.
Completely striking, and I'd say both completely fantastic in their own right. But
Mhm.
this is a matter of personal preference. Again, I think this one's truly fantastic. That's a special product.
I keep going to say something, but this whiskey is so like it's so commands your attention that it's hard to focus on the fact that we're trying to do a show here and we're trying to talk about this, because I'm kind of just stuck in my like experience of this whiskey right now.
I love that. I love to hear that too, because there's something about when you're tasting great, when you're tasting something that's truly great and just grabs your attention. It's I think it's important for those that are tasting these kind of amazing products to actually sit with it for a minute. And it's great that we get to talk about it and really work through the taste. But if you get the chance to taste these kind of amazing things, really sit with it and luxuriate in the fact that you got the opportunity to taste something so cool.
So now the question again is, at $95 somewhere about there on the shelf, is it worth it?
Yeah. Simply put, yeah.
Yeah, I think again, I'm gonna say the same thing as I said before. I think this lives up to the sourcing, this lives up to the notes on the bottle, this lives up to the price. I don't think there's any doubt it's worth the price. Now, the question I want to pose, that we said that the question is between these two. I mean, these are both special. These are both special occasion, ones you want to really sit with and luxuriate in. So, MJ, which one of these is your preference? Which one of these would you go to first?
Yeah, for me, these are two different whiskeys for two totally different scenarios in my life. I could see myself sitting with the Dingle, and that's where I'm going to be sitting, reading a good book and just enjoying. But with the Green Spot, that's when I want to sit down and enjoy with friends, just sitting by a campfire and enjoying the whiskey. Uh, if I had to choose gun to my head, I'm going to go with the Dingle just because I like the bolder flavor of it. Um, but that, again, doesn't take anything away from the Green Spot because that's a phenomenal product that we just tried.
So you're kind of saying the Dingle's like an experience enhancer and the Green Spot's the experience?
That's actually a really good way to put it, George. Yeah.
So, from somebody who has been to Ireland, who's experienced these in the home country, George, which one of these for you? I know it's hard because you love these. I can see it on your face. Your smile is so genuine. Which one of these is the one you go to? You're just sitting by yourself. Which is the one you go to first?
So I actually have a very good example of which one I would pick over the other without having anything to do with the quality of the whiskey, without having anything to do with the preference of the whiskey. But the place I tried the Green Spot for the first time is the place where I bought and decided to buy the Dingle and bring it back from Ireland and not the Green Spot.
Wow. Well, I mean, you can't say something more conclusive than that.
That being said, uh, whenever Dingle becomes available, a new batch stateside, I immediately buy a bottle. The moment this Green Spot came in, I immediately bought a bottle. There was no difference in reaction time, no hesitation. The cost, was not something I even thought twice about. And I normally don't like spending more than $50 on whiskey unless it's Scotch. And no hesitation of any kind on either of these. They're both just perfect examples of what whiskey can and should be.
Should.
Yeah, I agree on both counts. Now, this is the one I'm going to go counter. I'm going to go counter to both of you. I'm going to say I think for me, my one of my metrics is I think the Dingle is probably the one I'd want to drink more of because it's got that sharpness, that brightness, and balance all those interesting flavors. But if you're talking the one I want to analyze and I'm intrigued by the most, I don't think there's any doubt in my mind that I'm intrigued more by the Green Spot. And I think that's the one I'd want to sit and just dive into and work through. And I think for me, that's the one I would go to first. And I think I prefer it very, very slightly above the Dingle, just because of that. I think there's just so much to learn about it, and I'd really sit there and dive into it.
And I think the thing that speaks most loudly about both of these whiskeys is that even though we disagree, There is nothing I can disagree with you about. They're just both so damn good that
Yeah.
there's no argument to say, I disagree because no, that there's no wrong answer here. They're both world class, top of the line, some of the best whiskey money can buy. Period.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And what a great way to wrap up an episode. I mean, this is when you're talking about Irish whiskey, we've dove into the deep end of the pool here. We've experienced some of the finest stuff. And what I'm hoping to do in future ones is learn more about the different ranges that Irish whiskey has to offer and see, for my own educational purposes, what the different ranges can give to me and what I should expect. But I thank you to George for offering these up and giving us the opportunity to taste them side by side. What a special opportunity. And we're going to wrap up our Irish whiskey episode. George, where can they find you on the interwebs?
Instagram at Whiskey Jedi. Obviously, also justonedram.com, which is my fun little everything I do outside of my 9 to 5, if you will, even though I don't work 9 to 5 because I work in the drinks and the beverage industry. There's no normal hours. We're insane. Anyway.
Yeah. But yeah, subscribe to In Good Spirits on YouTube. That's where you can find our video version of the podcast, and subscribe to on your favorite podcast application. You can find me at Stromy, Food About Town on Facebook, at Stromy, Twitter, and Instagram. And we will leave Mr. MJ in the background to be mysterious.
That's right.
As
Incognito
is his
mode.
background.
He doesn't have internet. We had to give him a satellite phone to jump into this. He's off the grid.
Don't worry about the Nigerians running around behind you.
All the princes with the millions they want to give us.
That's
Yes,
right.
exactly. So, thanks everybody for tuning for another episode of In Good Spirits, and good drinking to everyone.
I'd cheers, but I finished
Cheers
both
to
of my
that.
whiskeys. Sorry.
All right, cheers.